Made in Lagos. Got his own Twitter icon.
Man.
Wizkid came back, give us an album. Hope it doesn't take him that long. It's been out how long now? Since an official album. Sounds from the other side.
Sounds from the other side, 3 years.
3 years.
2007, June 2017, sorry.
But Sounds from the Other Side does not, look like, if we're talking about Wizkid albums, because it's Ayo even we'll talk about, Superstar Ayo, then this, that he marketed as an album. So Sounds from the Other Side, he didn't market it as an album.
Well, we wouldn't exactly say they didn't market it as an album. They did market it as an album. They were just confused about what to call it. But at the time, what they were trying to do, they were trying to fill the market that they were trying to sell into at the time. It was a filler project. So what they were trying to do is, let's dip some toes in the sand. Let's see what's going to get us. Let's see how it's going to get us. And let's see what is going to happen with it. So they didn't exactly want to call it an album because an album will connote seriousness. They didn't want it to be too serious. But at the end of the day, they ended up making people name it by themselves. So people are saying, why are you calling this project an EP? It's an album because it just feels like an album. But at the same time, the construction of it feels like the construction of a mixtape. It doesn't exactly feel like an album, but it was an album.
Oh, talking about albums now, where does Made in Lagos, I know we'll talk about everything later, but where does it rank among his discography?
His bodies of work.
Yeah.
Made in Lagos is easily Wizkid's most cohesive body of work.
Superstar.
Easily. Superstar is his best album. Superstar is the classic. And now check this out. Even though Superstar is the classic, and Ayo is not a good album, Ayo might be Wizkid's most impactful body of work. Ask me why.
Why?
Ayo was the album that took Wizkid, that took his wave of Afrobeat to the world out of the country. The album wasn't well received, but over time, a song like Oju Elegba, before the album dropped, it was Bombay, it was Show You the Money, it was Jaye Jaye featuring Femi Kuti. But after the album dropped, a song like Ayo caught up, a song like In My Bed caught up, Oju Elegba caught up, the song with Akon caught up. Slowly, a lot of those songs on the album, you discover that over time, wow, the way this song basically took Wizkid from just a Nigerian artist into an African artist, then from an African artist into an international artist, it is his most impactful body of work. And it's a lot of songs that we didn't think were hits at the time. Wizkid was performing In My Bed on European circuit, on his European tours at the time. Shoni Aluko came on Twitter, was tweeting about In My Bed. Crazy. But as an album, as a body of work, Ayo was not a good album. There's a lot of people tend to conflate the fact that an album has hits with an album being a quality album. They are not the same thing. An album might have hits. It doesn't mean it's quality. Views has hits. It's not a top quality album. Scorpion has 3 number one hits. It's not a quality album. Cohesion, the listening experience that an album is able to give you. And when you go back to that album, it's not about giving you nostalgia. It's about giving you, wow, I had a good experience while listening to this. Not just the nostalgia. I had a good experience. That's what Superstar is going to give to you. It is a classic. Superstar is one of the 4 horsemen that define the Nigerian contemporary pop. That's number 1. True Story, Betty Maya, Congasso by Nice, Mushi to More Hits, and Wizkid Superstar. That's it. But in terms of cohesion, the way he constructed this album, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that, as he told Osisuave during his interview, he wasn't chasing hits. He just wanted to make music. And this is one of the reasons why this project is his most cohesive body of work. The sound that's birthed Made in Lagos, we first heard it on Sounds from the Other Side. Then we heard it on Soundman Volume 1. But Made in Lagos is the perfection of those sounds. And then Wizkid has sprinkled that sound with something special. And this sound, aside the fact that we heard it on Sounds from the Other Side, we got a little, it's the mid-tempo, Afro swing, Afro pop, Afro bashment sound. With a sprinkle of Afro beats, not Afro beats now, Afro beats and high life music. Then a little bit of Alter R&B, the things that them Odusi were doing. Mid-tempo records. Amazing.
So you touched on your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Kindly expand on it. What you thought about the album.
The album is good. It's a good album. But it's not for everybody. It's not an acquired taste. Like when you say it's not for everybody, people think, oh, it's an acquired taste. It's not an acquired taste. An acquired taste is something that has a niche appeal. Something that a lot of people won't be able to relate to. This album, if a lot of people settle down to listen to it, they can't relate to it. It's something they know. It's something they can listen to. Look at the sounds, for example. What are the sounds that made up Made in Lagos? Made in Lagos, at the root of it, is this Afrobeat form. Now, a lot of people are saying it's similar to what Show Them Camp has been doing since they released Feel Alright. Not essentially, but you can understand what they were saying. The difference is that Show Them Camp sound is more high life, and that's why it's like palm wine music. But Wizkid's music is more Afrobeat. At the root of it is this saxophone thing. On all the songs, saxophone, you could hear the saxophone, the way they were manipulating it and doing great things to it. Even on a song like Essence, you heard saxophones, you heard guitars, the way they were manipulating, Afrobeat guitar manipulation. So it was obvious that a thought went into this album. So there was that, there was Afrobeat thing, there was the Afro Bashment thing, there was like a song like Blessed, which was basically, it was basically like some form of alternative Afro fusion. That was what it felt like. Because at the root of it, you could hear some alternative, it felt like Monsters Unite. They are not from the same genre, but the way Monsters Unite warped genres, that's what that sound is. And then you had a song like Essence, which is by the one of the best songs Nigeria has in this year, by the way. Essence. It's an alter R&B kind of song. The song that them, like I said the other time, the song that the producers have been making. But he gave it a 7.2 or 7.3. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's not a good album. Maybe it's not a good album for you, but anybody that appreciates music will understand that this album is not a great album. It's not great. It's not going to be a superstar, but it's a good album. It's the thing that Wizkid needs right now.
Before, what was the state of Wizkid before the album? And do you think that state that it was before the album, kind of like affected how people received this album?
Kind of, yeah. Kind of. It was a situation of doubt had crept in before Wizkid released this album. We had a conversation when we were discussing Made in Lagos, that Made in Lagos, we discussed if it was going to be Wizkid's most important album. It is Wizkid's most important album because it came off the back of an uncertain run. There was an uncertainty to Wizkid. 2 bodies of work, not well received, very polarizing bodies of work. No, one is very polarizing, the other is just terrible. It's just really bad. While the thing that happened with Samson Beda's side wasn't necessarily his fault, a lot of it had to do with the label. And he was young at the time. He was going into a space that he hadn't been before. He was signing his first major international record deal. Well, save for the deal that Akon said he signed. Shout out to Akon, by the way. So he then went and made this album, and the album it alienated his fans on the home front. They succeeded in making him sound very Caribbean instead of African. I mean, there were records that were very Afrobeats on the record. So a record like African Bad Girl. But even African Bad Girl was a bridge between Afro-pop and electronic, even though it was produced by Stars. So you have to look at, the project wasn't particularly, it wasn't what anybody wanted it to be. And it sort of affected his representation on that side because it cracked the Billboard 200, make no mistake. But it wasn't the success that was needed, that was required at the time. So when that project dropped, Wizkid changed from there, became more of a recluse. Even he said it on his interview on Beats FM London, he stopped going to clubs. He wasn't going to a lot of interviews. He became a full-on recluse. He changed. He had his third child. He was handling things more discreetly. His personality changed. Even in videos, he wasn't really jumping around a lot. He was just moving there was a bridge between graciousness or gracefulness in how he was moving and I'm just not concerned about what you guys are doing. So, and then he released Maya in December with Mute. 2018, he had some sort of a good run in 2018. Started the year with Soko, Fake Love, Bad Energy, and ended the year with Fever. But then the doubts were there. Fever and Master Groove almost didn't enter until Wizkid released the video with Tiwa Savage. That was when people actually paid attention to Fever, which was a Wizkid record. 2019, Wizkid was just absent. He released Joro and Ghetto Love. I like Ghetto Love. But you have to, even though I like it, I'm going to tell you that, man, it wasn't a great record. But I like it. You can like something and understand. I like Spidality's records, some of Spidality's records, but you can say, fam, this record is not a very good record. Truth is like, I like it, but it's not a good record. So Ghetto Love, for example, it wasn't a good record. Joro, very polarizing. People dragged Wizkid on Twitter for that record. A lot of it came from Davido stands and Burna Boy stands and whoever else's stands. And when he released Smile, for example, Smile is a good record.
Yeah.
But it's not the record that the mainstream Nigeria likes or they will expect because it's not a pop record, it's an R&B record. No Stress, polarizing too, not a great record. But it's getting some form of buzz. It's Wizkid after all. Wizkid is not going to have bad numbers. He's going to have airplay. He is Wizkid. So those things, the numbers and the reception and the fact that his status has been able to carry songs have been the paper over the cracks for like a year. And some parts, and 2018 maybe not, because he had 3 hits, certified hits in 2018 and 2019. So, and some parts, and 2020 before he released this album. So Wizkid was coming into a place where this album had to work. It doesn't have anything to prove, make no mistake. He's the greatest of his generation. Yeah. But this album had to work. It simply had to work. That's it.
The album art.
Yeah.
He had one before that initially that changed to the one with him.
Yeah.
Why did he do that? How do you think he affected the album? Or which one did you prefer? Well,
I preferred the previous one. During interview circles before the release of this album, for example, during the Beat FM London interview, Wizkid was saying he wanted the album to be Lagos, to reflect Lagos, and a lot of other things. But when this album dropped, this album ended up making it look like Wizkid is the son of Lagos, not that he was bringing music from Lagos, because he didn't do anything from Lagos on this album. He didn't reflect Lagos. He didn't reflect the struggles of Lagos. He presented him as a Lagos boy. So the Made Lagos thing is as regards him, not as regards the music. So they took that back because they didn't want people to focus on that part of the music, because people would have, even now it's in the review that we wrote, that this album is not Lagos. And a lot of this album feels made for markets in the UK and Africa, the UK and the Caribbean. Markets that are more Wizkid ready, that are more Wizkid friendly. As great as Wizkid is, his sonic palette is not the most expansive. As great as Wizkid is, he's not exactly the most versatile of artists. He's not a Burna Boy. So as regards this record, they had to market it to places that were more friendly for Wizkid. And even if, regardless of his sonic palette or his deficiencies as an artist, the UK and the Caribbean are always going to be more receptive or friendly to African arts, to African music. Europe, mainstream Europe and the Caribbean, because first and second generation African immigrants are in these places who have strong relations to their African roots. They have strong ideas. They have a strong cultural identity. So the way that they are going to accept African music is going to be different to the way a lot of other people in the US, for example, who feel lost at the time, are going to accept the record. So when the art dropped, it was a situation of, we don't want it to be misconstrued. But it was actually the best one in terms of representation, in terms of detailing. Wizkid said he made it with TSC made it, TSC designed it, Thompson designed it. He said they worked on it for about 6 months. But he said they are still working on some other things. The current album art though, it's not bad. It's just, what I also feel like this album art came at like, I felt it was also very symbolic, because you changed it from an album art that celebrates Lagos into an album art that basically you are putting your hand on your head, and it's come at and it's well timed. Let's say it's well timed because the album was postponed due to NSAS protests, right? And then you are releasing an album art that goes from celebrating Lagos to you doing like this on an album title Made in Lagos. It felt like you were saying, man, okay, maybe Lagos isn't as good, even though your album started making Lagos. So it was very creative. Okay. I'll give him that.
We've talked about the sound.
Yes.
R&B, Afropop,
yes.
Afrobeats,
Yeah.
Hotel R&B, and
Yeah.
avant-garde
Yeah.
Afropop. Do you think the sound is the sound new?
No, it's not. It's not new. Wizkid himself has been doing this for a while, like we discussed the other time. It's the perfect, Made in Lagos, the sound of Made in Lagos is the perfection of what he's been doing over the past 3 years. It's not new.
Are people going to, it's not new, but are people going to jump on it?
People have been jumping on it. This year alone, Omale's Bad Influence, Adekunle goes something different. They are cut from sounds that Wizkid created 2 years ago. Fever, the sound from the percussion, the mid-tempo sound, the lo-fi sound, the minimalist production, everything. It's Wizkid.
Okay. What are your big songs and standout songs on the record?
Blessed is probably the best song on the project. Essence is one of the best songs that this country has seen this year, and Nigeria has seen this year. Reckless is also a really good record. It's a really good record. People are liking Ginger with Burna Boy, but it's not necessarily my favorite. I feel the track has some deficiencies production-wise. You could have done with some more layered production. You could have done with more diversity. What they did at the end, when Burna Boy played, if you did, it could have come earlier. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of the things on the record, and then a song like Long Time featuring Skepta. People are saying it feels dated because it sounds like Bad Energy. Well, it does. It's cut from the same cloth. That's what it is. It's still a good record. The weakest the records that maybe shouldn't have made it to the album. Gyrate feels like a filler. Grace is a good record, but the album would have missed it if it hadn't been on the album. But the songwriting is still not good. The songwriting on Essence is good, or better. The songwriting on Smile is good. It's really good. It's the best on the project. Blessed is good. Some parts of Reckless, they are good. But the problem is, Wizkid couldn't stay on topic, even on Blessed and Reckless. He went from talking on Reckless, or about being blessed on Blessed, to talking about women and whatever. They didn't correlate. You sort of digressed unnecessarily. Then on Reckless, the same thing happened. And then some parts, Wizkid's line, like we wrote in the review, it's based off insipid expressions and cliched lines and words. You could have done without all those things. I mean, you are Wizkid. You can say you want to do you. Like I was having a conversation with someone. Someone was saying, man, he just wanted to do him. He didn't want to call anybody. But you can say that I want to do me. It doesn't mean that it's the best thing to do.
So like we've seen a couple of albums like this where people are not like, artists are not focusing on like hit singles.
Yeah.
You know, Olamide, Simi, Adekunle Gold, now Wizkid. And Nigerian artists sacrificing that for quality albums. First
off, what purpose were singles serving? Singles were meant to be like a precursor to albums, basically. To whet the appetite before the album would come on and actually satisfy you and give you a better experience of what the artist does. Albums are like marks in time. They are the proof of artistry. Anybody can release a hit single. Not everybody can release good albums. Anybody can score a hat trick, but can you score 300 goals in your career? So there's a difference between greatness. Bodies of work are going to count for you when you are talking about greatness. Anybody can come and release Gangnam Style or Harlem Shake. Anybody can release whatever hit songs that have come from one hit wonders over the past 10 years in Nigerian music. So singles are meant to whet the appetite and show that the artist can actually create records that can mark the mainstream or that can mark the sands of time. So when over the past 1 year, for example, or since the turn of the year, Nigerian artists have been releasing albums, quality albums, without hit singles, which is sort of an anomaly. Before, Nigerian artists would want a hit before they release an album. And you couldn't blame them because the hit is going to make people get interested in you, depending on how you are marketed by your team and your record label and your whatever else. But now, you are looking at a Wizkid releasing an album without necessarily having a definitive hit before he releases an album. Burna Boy did the same thing. I was having a conversation with Olamide yesterday where he was saying that, man, I wanted Made in Lagos to be like a playlist. I wasn't going for a hit. I wanted Carpe Diem to be like a playlist. I wasn't necessarily going for a hit. So you look at it, Fireboy, New York City Girl wasn't a hit. Tattoo wasn't a hit. Simi dropped the quality EP. No hit. Adekunle Gold, okay, maybe something different, was a huge song. AG Baby was a good record, but it wasn't necessarily a hit. Quality album too. We released a factual episode some weeks ago where we were examining whether Nigeria was going back to an album market, and it looks like it, because it seems a lot of people understand that, look, your albums are going to give you streams. Your album, if you drop a quality album, it's going to have more streams than maybe your single will. Your single might just contribute to the overall streams of the album. So people are going for quality album more than they're going for this, more than they're going for quality singles. And it makes sense for us. It actually bodes well for Nigeria's future. So shout out to Nigerian artists. It also means a lot of them are studying the game better. They are aware.
Did this album come at the right time for Wizkid?
You could say that. He did. Really did. Really did. I was having a conversation with someone some days ago where the person said, oh, it was you and I. Well, we're discussing whether maybe he needed this album more 3 years ago. But the truth is, would Wizkid have released an album like this 3 years ago? He was in a different state of mind. He wanted hits at the time. He wasn't necessarily thinking about creating a cohesive body of work where he was just going to express himself. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's now an RC in UK. So it's a little bit more panache to what he's doing, personally as an artist. Also, you also have to think about the fact that he's also this at the earliest date of his veteran career. He's an OG now. Or this is a young OG now. And going forward, his OG is going to get more serious. So, Fireboy did the same thing. Quality album, not a lot of hit singles. But it just shows that things are looking up for Wizkid. Really, things are looking up for him because for the first time in 2 years, a lot of people that, like me, for example, are optimistic about his next few years, depending on what he does next. So, and that's facts only.